And welcome to the Multiversal Omnibus, where our splash pages hit harder than the mighty Thor, and our hot takes are delivered straight out of the Speed Force. I'm Chris Schisler. I'm a DC guy, but let me tell you, everything is on the table. Through our pages will be plenty of Marvel conversation. This show will be mostly DC and Marvel. We'll throw a little Star Wars at you. Every fan base will be celebrated in the show. We're going to talk about what we love. We're going to be positive about the things that we enjoy and we consume. So every meta human and mutant is welcome. Speaking of welcome, I want to introduce a guy you probably know from pretty awesome podcasts, some kick butt stuff. Elseworlds, a DC fan podcast, to the Infinity Saga and beyond. Jordan Wigand. How are you doing today? And yeah, welcome to the show.
I'm doing well. It's Friday that we're recording this, so that's nice. Fridays are, just wonderful for people that work I could say office job, 9 to 5 job, where it's like, I've been in retail in the past. I know that's where you're at, currently and stuff. You kind of, it sometimes don't appreciate Friday as much because you're like, well, it's just like any other retail day for me. But let me tell you, once you're in the office world, it's a different breed. At Fridays, I finally understand the hype.
I am going back to school on Monday. I'm in a master's program to end up becoming a high school English teacher. So maybe weekends will be something I can appreciate on a regular basis in the coming years. So before I get into asking you some questions and getting the show going, I do want to make a quick note. This show was originally conceived as a passion project of me and my friend Ron. The Multiversal Omnibus is supposed to include everything. Ronald, he's not available to get going right now. And I appreciate you stepping up to be the first co-host of this show, of the inaugural episode. And as far as I'm concerned, this will always be Ron's podcast. That chair is always his. Can't wait for that. But for now, we have a really fun podcast to talk about a lot of things. Before we get into what we're going to talk about today, tell us about your fandom. Who's your favorite DC character, and who's your favorite Marvel character?
So my favorite DC character really changes on the day, I would say. But as I get older, it is more and more Superman. But generally, I consider Superman and Batman pretty tied on my list of favorite DC characters. When it comes to Marvel, my favorite character is Peter Parker, Spider-Man. So, I grew up in the 90s, so everything that was on TV was Batman the animated series, Superman the animated series, Justice League, Spider-Man the animated series, right, and X-Men the animated series. So really, when you're growing up, those felt like the only heroes to pick from. I always think it's amazing that somebody can grow up now and be asked, who's your favorite superhero? And you can hear the answer, Rocket Raccoon. Like, that is mind-blowing to me that is a possibility in this day and age. Because, growing up, it was the big three. And really, I grew up with those big three being my favorite, Superman, Batman, and Spider-Man.
I can certainly dig it. And I grew up in very much the same time. So I understand that 100%. I'm a Batman guy, as you can probably tell. But there's probably not a comic book character that I don't at least have a little bit of admiration for. I love comics. Love Superman, love Flash. Batman and Flash are my top two. And for Marvel, it's a tie between Spidey and Daredevil. That's good stuff. I very excited to talk to a very well-rounded fan today.
I just want to say too, if I can just add on to what I was saying, is I have a friend, Jack. He's been on my show a few times because you mentioned Daredevil. His favorite heroes are his top two heroes are Ant-Man and Doctor Strange, and he also really likes Daredevil. So again, just like the mind-blowing that Doctor Strange and Ant-Man have risen so high in there. Ant-Man used to be a joke, but the fact that they've risen so high is just showing how exactly like how well off we are on comic adaptations and it being in the zeitgeist.
This is perfect though, because this is the Multiversal Omnibus. We're into it all. This is a show for all of comics, all of comic book properties, movies, the DCU, MCU, and we're going to talk a little Ant-Man in a little bit. The first topic of the day: James Gunn and Peter Safran are about to present their DC slate. So we've been told. This month is getting close to the end of January. We still don't have the slate. We're still sitting on the edge of our seat going, yes, where is it? But there's a lot of speculation to be had. Knowing our luck, I heard another podcast, the Vigilante 1939 podcast I was listening to. They said that knowing their luck, right after they record, James Gunn will make his announcements. I'm going to steal their line because my luck is probably worse than theirs. So this recording could be speculation right before we get it. But what I want to ask you, what's the big thing, the big ticket thing that you want to see, the thing that makes everything go for you if you get it in the DCU? And we'll start there, and then as we kind of talk about what we want, we'll get into what we don't want. Let's start with what we want most desperately from the DCU.
Yeah, just real quick, I like the shout out to the Vigilante 1939. Those guys are great. But
one of my favorites.
But yeah, so I mean, I interact. We all interact with each other on Twitter all the time. But if you haven't listened to them, go ahead and give their stuff a try. But what I do want to say is I think you're pretty safe. It's Friday at 5:00. Nothing's going to come tonight. I can almost guarantee that. And nothing's going to be released on the weekends. My bet is really, it's got to be Monday or Tuesday. Tuesday's the 31st. And if I'm James Gunn and the more people ask about it, I'm making it the 31st. Like I am having a fun time with that and saying, all right, I'm going to wait. But I'm not expecting many projects here. He's mentioned a few times he has an 8 to 10 year slate, right? But that most likely is going to be a few projects. So in my sense, we already know one with Superman. And what I want, I posted this on, I think, my Instagram and Twitter before on what I want for like the slate. And I picked 3 projects because I felt like that's a probably realistic number of what he's going to reveal is I think 3 to 4. And I had Superman, obviously. I'm a huge Superman fan. I had Green Lantern because I think it'd be really cool if they start growing out the cosmic side of that. And I also picked, sorry, my dog's barking. I also picked Booster Gold. And I picked Booster Gold because I think he's really funny character. He had one of my favorite episodes of Smallville was based around Booster Gold. And those would be like my top 3. Like, this is what I want to get. And I think Booster works because he's not an A-list character. So you have 2 A-lists right off the bat with Superman and Green Lantern. And then here's our funny guy that is kind of like, I would compare him to Star-Lord, where people would probably relate to Booster a lot. And I think he could be one of those, like Guardians of the Galaxy, a character that comes out of nowhere and becomes super popular with the mainstream public.
Yeah, I saw that thread. I knew exactly where you were going, but that doesn't make great podcasting. If I'd be like, well, I know what you want. Yeah, I like that a lot. Green Lantern is one of those things that I'm just assuming we're going to get. I can't imagine you don't get Green Lantern. I don't know that it's the beginning of it. If they go Green Lantern, I'm really interested. Do they go John Stewart? Do they go Hal Jordan? Do they bring everybody in together? I personally would like a John Stewart story because I think Justice League Unlimited was my biggest
Yes.
window into Green Lantern and John Stewart and the DC animated stuff. Um, he's the character that kind of steals the show for me from that. I love John Stewart Green Lantern. Um, what I want more than anything, assuming I can get it, is a Flash movie that's actually about the Flash and not setting up some otherworldly change of the universe. Now, I don't get me wrong, I'm excited about having two Batmen in a Flash movie. I'm excited about Sasha Calle, Supergirl, and whether or not we get the cameos in that that you keep hearing, oh, they're in, they're out, they're in, they're out. But I'd like to see I'm a big Flash fan. I'd like to see a Flash family in the DCU. I'd like to see Barry. I'd like to see Wally, and everything extending out of that. I wouldn't even mind seeing Jay Garrick Flash. So really, because I think the Flash is like you talk about the Trinity of DC. It's Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. I think Flash is the fourth guy. You could argue Green Lantern. I can't stand that Flash is been teased to us for so long. We're gonna get the movie, and it's like an event movie that may or may not matter, may or may not have dire consequences, one way or the other, good or bad. As a Flash fan, I want to see a Flash movie without the pressure that this Flash movie has. And I'd like to see some Green Arrow and Black Canary in there because I think they kind of bring more of that street tier DC. It's not just Batman and Robin. There's more street tier characters, and Green Arrow is a great character, and I think if written well, I think he'll be a fan favorite. Arrow is very popular. It was a good TV show for a while. And I kind of miss Arrow. So as a big Arrowverse fan, I'm kind of like, give me Flash, give me Green Arrow. And I assume I'm getting Superman. So I'm just not even like barking up the tree for Superman. I assume that's what's coming when you heard he's writing the script. He's not yet casted it because he doesn't cast until he writes. When you heard he's writing the script, we know. And Henry Cavill's situation not coming back, we know Superman is coming. We know he's going to be a younger Superman. And we'll see what we get. But that's what I want the most. I want my favorite characters outside of the Batman world, and we better get the Batman stuff too. I know it's been promised it's safe, but if Matt Reeves can continue what he's doing, and maybe you get a more Bat God level Batman in the DCU, and you get that dark, twisted, realistic Batman in the Batman, I am going to be happy.
Yeah, some other characters I wrote down that I wanted as well was I really want to see Martian Manhunter in here. Not like as a separate project. I just need him to start showing up, and actually act like Martian Manhunter. Meaning, that little twist that they did in Zack Snyder's Justice League, where he's Martha in one scene, right, and then he's also revealed to be one of the military guys that was kind of just, I don't know. It felt like he was sitting on the sideline for way too long during all these big threats. I feel like Martian Manhunter would be jumping in there. Bat Family. I want the Bat Family because we've had all these movies. I mean, I was growing up with, Batman Forever, Batman and Robin, where they actually had the Bat Family, but they were at that point such jokes, right? And it feels like every director since then is like, we don't want to touch Robin, like Christopher Nolan not wanting to touch Robin, and then making, was it the Detective Blake, right?
Oh,
Robin
don't get me started on that.
Is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And what I would probably want as well is us to be introduced to Robin in one of these projects, the Batman or or the DCU Batman, right? And having him be Dick Grayson, and we get to watch him evolve into Nightwing over this 10-year plan that they have, I think would be something that's really, really great. And then I also said the JSA. I really like the Justice Society of America. Dr. Fate was awesome in Black Adam. I want to see more Dr. Fate. I want to see, bizarre characters like, Hourman and Spectre and all those characters that come with the JSA. So those are up there for me. And I think what you could do well with that is, if you wanted to, you can set it as like in a whole different time where it doesn't have to link up to everything if you don't want it to. And then it could just be like backstory or whatever, it all depends on what they want to do with it. But those are characters like I absolutely want to see. And your idea of Green Arrow coming into this, which I was wondering if they would this quickly after Arrow, but I think it'd be fun once Green Lantern is established and Green Arrow is established, if we get Green Lantern and Green Arrow. Those are comic book team-ups that they've done before. And I would probably, Blue and Gold, like bringing in Blue Beetle with Booster Gold. We can have fun team-ups like that. And what I'm assuming, there you go.
Give it to me.
We need Arrow. We need Arrow in his regular costume,
Oh, so you mean he should actually look like Robin Hood? He should and he should have the goatee. He's got to have the goatee, and not just like that short little Stephen Amell goatee. He should look all its glory. Goatee. Yeah. Green Arrow, Green Lantern. I have the absolute right here. If you haven't read this and you're a DC fan, like, stop listening to this. Come back. It's one of my top 10 books, which is a spoiler for what we're going to talk about at the end of the show.
But yeah, I mean, I think what James Gunn can do is, we already heard Superman is not going to be an origin. And my thought is, most of these movies are not going to be an origin. If we can just start in media res, the DCU is founded. These characters are known enough. And if they're not known enough, you can give enough background in it without any drop of like quality, right? And I think that can work. We don't always need a Batman Begins type of thing, We just saw the Batman, which was very successful, skipped over the origin completely. But I think even characters like Green Arrow can probably skip the origin. He had a whole TV show. The Flash, I would probably just start with Wally West, honestly, because Barry Allen has been in the movies and he's been in the TV shows as the star. And I think it depends on how they're going to figure out how this relates. Like, if they actually still use the Flash movie to reboot and they don't want to continue with Ezra Miller, you just recast them. You don't recast them, but you say, all right, Wally is our Flash going forward. And you could still be like, this is part of the new universe that, Barry fixed. Whatever. You can make it work that way if you wanted to. But I'm also fine with just going blank slate and being like, Barry's been around. He's missing. Wally's taking up the mantle. Like, we only have so much time in our lives. We don't need to keep hitting the reset button every time. Let's jump right in, is my thought process on this.
I love everything you just said. Wally West is a great way to rebrand Flash for two reasons. First off, guys who were kids when we were are probably more aware of Wally West than they are Barry Allen.
It's the Jon Stewart effect, right? Us growing up with DC, the DC animated universe, Jon Stewart was our Lantern and Wally West was our Flash.
Yep.
And those are the ones I relate to because I grew up watching them in the cartoon. And those were the ones that were popular in the comics when I was growing up as well.
Yeah, so Wally West is really, I think he's kind of the Flash that DC doesn't seem to believe in, because every time they do a Flash project, it seems like they push Barry Allen. And I like Barry Allen. Barry's actually one of my top 5 comic characters. If I had my druthers, I would have never cast Ezra Miller as Barry Allen in the first place. And one of the problems I'm finding is if you do recast Ezra Miller, if you do recast Barry, everyone's like, "Oh, well, this guy looks like Ezra Miller." The Flash doesn't look like Ezra Miller, and I think that's lost in the general audience, and it's not that big of a deal. But I love everything you said about Wally West, and I think you open up a whole new door. And if you really want to make DC a new thing, use the Flash movie as a vehicle to get to Wally is genius. It's bold. The only problem is, say the Flash is just a big hit, and say the Flash makes $1 billion, which I'm not sure it will, but let's say it makes $1 billion. Do you still think Wally West is the future? Because the general audience is like, that big movie that we keep talking about. Oh, wait, now there's a new Flash. They reset it again. Can DC do anything right? I can just see the narrative from that.
Well, that'll be the narrative. That'll be the narrative anyway, right? Even if it's popular and they reset because James Gunn took it over, that's going to be the narrative. Oh, we finally got something great and they're resetting. They can't do anything right. If it sucks and they reset, it's like, look, they tried to reset and they have to immediately reset again. There's no win here at this point, I don't think. My thought process is you can't continue the Ezra Miller experiment, right? Because while they've been good in the role, I would say at times, there's also just this stuff that he's doing or that they're doing is going to continue to creep up anytime in the red carpet. People are going to ask about it. There's going to be stuff that brings this stuff back up. 2, nobody is actually talking about Ezra Miller as the Flash being the highlight of the movie. We keep hearing 2 Supermen, Supergirl, stuff like that. And people kept saying how miscast Ezra Miller was in Justice League, that he's acting more like Barry than acting more like Wally than Barry, the way that they wrote the character Flash. So at this point, it's like, I don't really know. I think if it's a big hit, what if Aquaman 2 is a big hit? We already know Momoa's probably not returning in it, right? So in my thought process, if they're willing to throw away Aquaman, which is their only $1 billion film in the DCU,
which we still don't know that they're willing to throw away Aquaman.
Right.
If Jason Momoa's video gives you anything, it gives you that it's very open-ended, but he's going to be in DC movies. I know we're thinking Lobo. I know that. Anyone who follows this knows that. Mm-hmm. And I mean, no one's going to fight Jason Momoa as Lobo. I don't think that's possible. I don't think anyone's going to be like, no, I can't see that at all.
I did see somebody say that, but it's
the internet ridiculous. Exists for a reason, I guess.
It's ridiculous. But it's his favorite character. It's Momoa's favorite character. And I take his statement of, nobody's taking Aquaman away from me and all that kind of stuff very differently than some people, I guess. He's like, I'll always be Aquaman. That sounds like how people, Henry Cavill just said he'll always be Superman, meaning that's part of him. But also, like, if they reboot, it's not like they're taking Aquaman away from him, and to be honest, maybe there's no plans for Aquaman going forward right now because of, maybe they're going to lean on some of these other characters. And by the time we get back to Aquaman, Momoa's too old anay. That's my thought.
I have a hard time imagining Jason Momoa becomes too old in an 8 to 10 year plan. But point taken. I like where you're going with that. I would also add, though, that Aquaman is one of the problems with fan casting because Jason Momoa made Aquaman cool, and I don't want to go backwards with the character because I don't want it to be the I think DC in general has a bit of a diversity problem with a lot of their old established characters are one of the things in the universe is Batman and Superman look like each other. They're standard white guys. And then I don't want to go backwards with inclusion with Aquaman. And to be perfectly honest with you, I think I like Aquaman in the movies more than I ever have in the comics. I don't actually love Aquaman comics. There's some good ones. I've read some ones that I've enjoyed. Um, I if you asked me which direction should we go, I just don't think you're going to win a comparison with a guy against Jason Momoa. I think the general audience loves Jason Momoa. I think the general audience is here. He could play a hot dog vendor in New York City, and people would probably be like, "Yeah, I got to go see this Jason Momoa movie." Um, and you know, that sounds like something I've heard. So if I stole that from someone, I apologize. Um, I listen to a lot of podcasts, but yeah, I really will tell you, Jason Momoa being two characters, I think could work, especially because I think if you're gonna wait on Aquaman a little bit, Lobo and Aquaman are gonna look completely different. I actually wouldn't even mind Lobo being a little CGI. Not quite like Thanos, but I wouldn't mind him not looking exactly like Jason Momoa.
Yeah, that's interesting. We know people can play two roles. I mean, the MCU used to be more strict about this, but lately has been a little bit more lenient on this stuff. Where like Gemma Chan, right, played Minerva in Captain Marvel, and she also is Cersei in Eternals. So, and that one of them is because one's an alien and she's covered in blue paint, and the other one she's you know whatever an Eternal is, right? They're still not human, but but she's looking like her human self. So you could have Momoa like that, but I really wonder how this is going to shake out with the question marks of Shazam, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
is he in the plan? And if so, is it Zachary Levi? Or are we rebooting everyone? Peacemaker season 2, is that going to it's still going to happen, I think, because he even said like James Gunn just posted like see you guys soon to the cast, but it's like, okay, where do we go from here? Is it a full reboot, or are we keeping the positives like Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn and Momoa as Aquaman and Zachary Levi as Shazam? Or are we and that's why that Flash thing could still work. If you're going to still use the Flash reboot and they're just going to shoot something at the end that's like, maybe they show the newspaper that says Barry's missing and it's supposed to be kind of like a reference to Crisis on Infinite Earths, but you could do something like that and then Barry actually be missing and they're going to introduce Wally, and then you still have Momoa, you still have Zachary Levi, and then you can recast Superman because he's younger in this universe. Like, you can still do stuff like that, but I think at some point we have to just shed the weight, because as
Mm-hmm.
much as some of these characters are liked and actors are liked in these roles, the reason why even these soft reboots like Wonder Woman 84 and The Suicide Squad are not as popular are because people are confused. The general public is confused on what is and what isn't important in the story. You know, is this the same? Like, people, I'm sure when the Batman came out, were like, well, why isn't it Ben Affleck? Like, is this connected? And then they have to be told in interviews, oh, this is our own thing. That can only go so far, right? And it seems like any movie that is still associating itself with that universe, Black Adam coming out and saying, hey, we're going to have Henry Cavill Superman, didn't move the needle at all box office wise. And that is the real problem now, is this universe has been going on for 10 years, 2013. And it just keeps dropping lower and lower on the radar for people. I see people crapping on the Shazam trailer, and now I'm worried that movie's not going to do well. So it really has, like, there's a stink on it, and we need to like take the bath and just cleanse it.
I don't disagree with what you're saying. I think we're getting closer and closer to soft reboot with everything that I keep seeing, especially because I think they want to keep a lot of the. I have a theory that Wonder Woman and Aquaman are going to be put on the bench a little bit. I kind of agree that they're going to wait on them, especially because if you bring in, say, you go into the Supergirl direction, or you bring in Black Canary too. You kind of buy yourself some time with Wonder Woman, especially if you do Barbara Gordon or any of the Batgirls, Justice, Stephanie Brown, whichever one you want, Cassie Kane, any Batgirl you want. That buys you some time on the Wonder Woman front, and you can even bring in Zatanna. So there's a lot of Poison Ivy, Harley Quinn. There's a lot of things you want. My problem that I think DC is having is they don't want to get rid of the actors. They want to get rid of the world. Yeah. And I think the Flash is going to lean into multiverse. And what we're going to have to see is, can these actors play the same characters in a different continuity and a different universe? Because that's where I think James Gunn needs to go. I think you need to keep some of the principal cast to keep the familiarity up. But and there should even be a line like, you're not the same Harley Quinn that I remember, and something like that. But like the Flash finding Harley in a different universe and going, wait a second, what? But I don't know. I'm at the point where I'm just waiting for James Gunn to tell me what he's going to do. I actually feel bad for Peter Safran because everyone just says James Gunn, and Peter Safran doesn't even factor into people. He's not. Peter Safran's like he's getting bombarded. I'm just like,
he probably likes that. It's always hashtag fire James Gunn. It's not hashtag fire Peter Safran. So I'm pretty sure he's probably cool with what's going on.
Well, he's got it. I think I saw on Twitter the family picture of his daughter in the DCU sweatshirt. And, he's definitely involved. He's definitely building the plans. He's the business guy. And I think from a business stance, he's probably saying, I can't part with this A-list talent, especially when you got to consider bringing people into a brand new universe with the stink that the past universe had is going to be a bit of a tough sell. There's going to be a lot of actors who are like, nah, I don't want that. There's a lot of people waiting for this to fail.
I think there will be a lot of people with seeing James Gunn attached and will want to do it. He's got the reputation of people wanting to work with him that I think can work in DC's favor. Especially after the David Zaslav stuff, where I really felt like it'd be hard to get any talent. And then James Gunn got there, and you're like, okay, never mind. They can get talent now with James Gunn. The issue with trying to hold on to some of these cast members, if they keep them in the same roles, is just confusion. I can understand, us comic book readers and the people that read this stuff and watch it all the time are going to be like, oh, yeah, no problem. It's just a new continuity. But there will be, the Suicide Squad was the most soft reboot ever, right? And it didn't
get softer of a reboot. You're right.
It didn't do great, it tried to detach itself from it. It still made references to it, but since it still had some of the cast members, people were like, I'm not going to watch this if it's the same thing. And they missed out on a great movie, because that's my favorite DCEU film is the Suicide Squad. But that's where we kind of run into, if let's say they keep Momoa or they keep Margot Robbie, and then the next film has a trailer with them two in it, some people will be like, I did not like those other movies. I'm not going to go watch this one. And that's where it's like, this is the conundrum they're in, right? This is the issue, that it's not an easy solution, because like you said, they want to continue the working relationship. So that's why I feel like, Gunn's statement of finding Henry Cavill another potential role, I don't think was just BS to make him look good. I think it's like, we want to keep these relationships because of, one, the awful relationships we have right now, thanks to Zaslav cutting everything, but also because, maybe Gunn probably does like Cavill as an actor, but it's like, the story I made for Superman isn't going to fit his version. So we have to part ways. And, he knows the baggage that's there, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting points of all of our conversation on this is that we haven't really come up with one good answer or one bad answer. I think there's a lot in play. And I think that's why the Peter Safran thing is interesting to me, because it's, well, what can you do? Because I think James Gunn is drawing up on an easel, and I think Peter Safran is measuring twice, cutting once kind of thing. I think he's saying, okay, James, but can we do that? Is that going to work? Because if you think about this, James Gunn's always been a director. He's never been the producer. So I don't think there's anyone who doubts that James Gunn is the creative guy. My question to you is, how much autonomy does he really have in the beginning? I have no doubt that once DC Studios is successful, David Zaslav will just say, okay, do your thing, keep making me money. I'm not a creative. I don't want anything to do with that. I don't want any of the hate spewed my way. I want Warner Brothers positivity. So he wants to give James Gunn the freedom. My question is, in the beginning, does he have that freedom? And are there contingencies when they met, when he won the job? Because remember, Abney and DeLuca almost won the battle for DC, or at least that's, and $7 put their hands in there and said, this is what we should do. So, yeah, by the way, I don't want to get on a soapbox, but the way I was manipulated by Dwayne Johnson as a DC fan, that guy I'm done with him. As I don't want him anywhere near DC. And I hope Marvel doesn't even, I don't think they would. I don't think, dude, like, it's just, you manipulated me. You got my hopes up with Henry Cavill, and now get out of here, buddy. So, yeah.
The fact that he turned down, cameos for Shazam films, which is where his character is actually famous from, it is enlightening, right?
It's all about The Rock. It's all about The Rock. It can't be about anybody but The Rock. That was the problem.
I think when it comes to, like, how James Gunn got the job, right? And he had one of the most critically acclaimed movies and a critically acclaimed TV show for HBO Max. And it seemed like he understands the characters. And I think Zaslav does know that is an important part when he's looking for a Kevin Feige type figurehead. I think Gunn probably was the one, I'm not sure how it worked, that goes to Peter and says, hey, I know the characters, you know the business, let's team up and pitch this to Zaslav so that way we can take control. And I'm sure one of the things was, we need a Superman movie from Zaslav, is what I think. Because in the earnings calls, before he even hired anybody, he said, we're going to have focuses on Wonder Woman, Aquaman, right, Superman, Batman. He's like characters that have been sitting on the bench too long, like Superman and Superman's particularly. And I'm sure that's one of the things that, like, all right, James, if you're going to get this, you're going to make a Superman movie. And that's probably going to kick off everything, right? Is my thought. I think that's the movie that kicks off the DCU. And I think that's because James has said in the past he wouldn't really want to work on a Superman movie. He does like Superman. It's one of his favorites, but he always wanted to experiment with some of the characters that don't have as much built-in, like, conceptions in people's minds. Like, if you say Superman, somebody's going to watch his movie and say, that's not Superman to me. So he tried to stay away from that, and he's using characters like Polka Dot Man and Peacemaker that people don't care about. Well, Superman, now that he's the head, now that he's the head of it, he has to do these things. And I think that's part of, like, the James. That's why I don't think he'll direct it, honestly. I think he's just going to write it. I think he's like, I don't want to direct this. I'm going to write it because I can write it. I can understand it. I can make a good Superman movie, but I'm going to give it to somebody that can match that tone as a film better than I can. I think he knows his strengths better than anyone else. And everybody that's out here saying it's just going to be fart jokes or dick jokes the whole time is just completely screwed up with what
I
they
agree with
think.
that 100%, but I will say that I kind of want him to direct it because I love James Gunn movies. I've been
He's
down
so
with the
good.
Guardian. James Gunn is the reason I want James Gunn to be the director of a Superman movie. Now, remember when it was Henry Cavill, we thought, oh, we might get Christopher McQuarrie from the Mission Impossible movies. They worked together in the past. But I don't want a Christopher McQuarrie style. By the way, I love Mission Impossible and I love Christopher McQuarrie. I think he does great work. That's not the point. The point is I don't want that. I want heart. I want heart, hope, and I want, you know what I want? I want a Lois Lane like we have on Superman and Lois who gives you the business and is just as strong of a character as Clark. And I think you're going to get that with James Gunn directing the movie. So I want a Superman world with heart. And I don't think you get that by saying, all right, let's find a great action director. I think you get that by going, okay, how am I going to get you to focus on this character? Because if you walk out of a Superman movie and you say, wow, that was great action, you're walking into Man of Steel again. And I love Man of Steel, one of my favorite movies of all time. I will defend it to the day I die. Actually, the third time you watch Man of Steel, at least for me, my mind was like, I get everything now. And that's kind of the way Zack Snyder movies tend to go, but that's a whole other episode. Honestly, we could have a 5-hour talk on Zack Snyder and all of the baggage that brings. But I don't want to go in that direction with the general audience. I want them to walk out of this going, I love Clark Kent. I don't want them to come out of the movie going, I love Superman. I want them to say, I love Clark Kent. And I know a lot of people feel this way about Superman, but if you focus on Clark, you're going to get the best Superman story. I know it's not an original take in the sense of that's what all Superman fans want. There's not one Superman fan who said, I want another 300 buildings falling down in a Superman movie.
Well, there are some, because I've heard the complaint a lot of, or not the complaint, but like the mantra, right, of Clark Kent is the disguise. He's really Superman, but I think he's more like Peter Parker, Spider-Man, and we mentioned this on my podcast that when I had you on. But these characters are more alike than we think when it comes to. He is Clark Kent. He was raised to be a Kent. All of his heart and all of his good personality bits come from the Kents, not from the L's. Right. So in my thought is he's just as much Clark as he is Superman. Right. There's always some people that'll say, like, you have the Zack Snyder viewpoint of where it's more like the imagery is always more like Jesus, right? Like a God on earth, stuff like that. But when you get to how to have somebody connect with someone, it's more going to be on the personality side. It's going to be more on showing us Clark at the Daily Planet, falling in love with a human, right?
Clark as a friend. Clark as a friend, not an angel.
Right. A guy who could destroy the world with all of his power, but
and if there's a 1% possibility,
yeah, we got to end it, right? But he could do all of that, but he also is someone that will stick up for the little guy. And he's someone that stays out of international conflict. We see it in Superman and Lois when he saves a North Korean sub and the U.S. government gets mad at him. He's like, that's not my job. I'm not the tool of the U.S., which is kind of opposite of Red Sun, right? If you read Red Sun, where he's a tool of the Soviets. But
another book we're going to be talking about in 30 or 40 minutes. It's totally going to happen.
You're right. You want to see people walk out of this movie and say, Superman is cool again. Everybody says he's boring. Everyone says he's too much of a Boy Scout. There's ways to make it work. And there's ways to make him be absolutely cool without making him a god walking on Earth.
Now, my question to you is: do you want everything to hinge on Superman, or do you want them to start out the new DCU with a character like a Booster Gold that James Gunn can do his James Gunn thing with, and it's kind of a safe, like little start with little pressure? Do you want to do that? Because I kind of think you need to come swinging with Superman,
Oh
and
yeah.
I think you need to. I think you need to get 2024 Superman if possible. I don't think it's happening, but if you could get 2024 Superman, I think it. What?
I was just thinking. I looked at the calendar. I said it's probably not happening.
It's not happening.
If they can
But I
start
want it
filming
to
by
happen.
summer, which at this point they don't. He's not done writing yet, so I would say probably not. But by summer or by October, if they could film, they could get it out for a December release. But I don't think they'll do that
Yeah,
because
it's going to be 2025.
Aquaman's this year, right?
Yeah, Aquaman's this year.
Yeah, they
But
keep
the
moving
one
on.
thing that they have going for them is all these movies that are coming out this year have been done for a
For a
while.
long time, yeah.
So, and also, we don't know what they're doing. So they might have already done some stuff. Obviously not casting, obviously not that. But I don't know how far along he is in this because he's being very coy about certain things. And I think he's waiting for a big reveal for a lot of things. I think he's got more figured out than we give him credit for. So I think you can hit the ground running. I don't know if you can get it out in 2024, but I tell you, if you can get a good movie out in 2024, hit the ground running. But you have to give us something to hope for 2025. We're going to be starving DC fans because we're waiting for the second Batman. We might not get that to 2027 the way Matt Reeves works.
Well, to answer your question about how you launch this, I think you launch it with Superman. It's going to be a May or June 2025. I think you put your stamp down for a summer 2025 big blockbuster. That's what I'm thinking. And
can you wait that long to start the DCU? I think you need to start the DCU and build up to Superman.
No, you gotta. Superman launches it. He launched the whole DC universe when he premiered in Action Comics. I think this is the right way to go about it. It's also going to give a little bit more time between some of these projects that are coming out this year and the official launch of it that maybe has people begging for DC films that are not the Joker 2. Right?
Then you better give me some TV shows while we wait because you're canceling all the TV shows. You better give me something as a DC fan while we wait because Marvel is going to keep me on a loop of I don't even have time for this. And DC's like, you want content? No, you're not getting content because we can't make content because we're broke apparently.
Yeah, well, I think you just have to, I think we just have to be realistic in the sense of he just took over in November, and to get it out the door, 2025 is going to be the soonest he'll be able to do it. Now, we'll still get content because we'll probably get Peacemaker season 2 before then.
Yeah,
we'll get the rest of like the tail end of whatever they already had in the pipeline. It
looks like an Amanda Waller show is going to happen.
Yeah, but
yeah,
I think you launch it in 2020. He's got a 4-year contract. So you don't want to slow start it either because he's going to be judged on these 4 years.
That's the problem.
He has a 10-year plan, but he's might only see 4 of these depending on how well it goes. So I think you absolutely start with Superman, and that would be 2 years into his contract, and then you by then would also probably have another 3 projects ready to go, and if they make money, his contract will be renewed and they'll continue the plan.
My question for you is, does the 2023 movies Flash, Aquaman, Shazam, Blue Beetle, do these movies have to do well, and is there any weight for James Gunn's career on these movies? Because I know he has nothing to do with them for the most part. I know he gave notes to the directors. But I just, that worries me because Warner Brothers, they don't like to stick to things.
He won't be judged on this. He won't. I think as bad as Zaslav has been about stuff, he understands. He knows.
But that's why I'm worried. He's been bad. He canceled a whole Batgirl movie that was done.
Right, but I don't think he'll abandon the plan. This was his whole plan. The reason he canceled Batgirl was to do this, was to relaunch this whole thing and make it stick. And also, I guess he didn't think Batgirl was going to be good. But you know, he's not going to be judged on this at all. These movies, and you know who will judge him on it? The people that are already anti James Gunn anyway. So when these movies come out, and if they stink, they'll be like, "Well, he took over in November. These movies came out after that." But
Well,
it's not realistic.
DC never gets fair treatment anyway. Yeah, DC never gets fair. When's the last time you heard a fair, civil, nice conversation on the internet about DC anything? Never.
Well, to be fair, I don't hear much civil discourse about Star Wars, Marvel, or DC on Twitter.
Well, Phase 4 has kind of thrown Marvel for a loop. I think Phase 4 has actually been a lot of fun.
Me too. Yeah.
We should probably transition a little bit. I think because look, we can talk about the DCU forever. I think we had a good talk. I don't know that there's that much more to say at this point until we have more things down. I want to, for the sake of time, get to our next subject. We got some trailers to talk about. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania is coming up, and yesterday we got the Shazam! Fury of the Gods trailer. Which one of those would you like to dive into first? Want to stay with DC, or you want to jump over to Marvel?
I guess let's talk Shazam first.
Yeah, let's stay with DC until we conclude that. And then we're going to talk about these two trailers. And then we're going to give you a look at our top 10 favorite comic book stories. So that'll be the show. So Shazam! Fury of the Gods, I thought was entertaining. I thought the trailer set some tension up. I kind of got where the story was going. And the bad guys, or the bad girls in this case, looked really interesting. I want to see where they're going. It looked better than I think you would expect it to look in a trailer. It looked bigger in scale than the first Shazam movie. I just hope it keeps the same heart as the Shazam movie, because I'm gonna hone it. I'm gonna pound it onto the table every episode. The DCU needs to be about heart. If there's one thing that I want, it's heart. And the Peacemaker was a great example. I need more of that. I love the trailer. I've watched it 3 times. I'm ready. Take my money, and I don't even care if it leads to the next portion of DC movies, because, quite frankly, I love Shazam 1. So you already have my money.
I thought it was an okay trailer. I saw some people saying it looked awful. I've seen some people saying it was amazing. I kind of fall in the middle here. It looks like a Shazam film, right? Like now I saw some people complaining it looks darker. You know, we have a scene where Billy is asking the wizard to take his power back, but to me, I think that's going to be just, it's going to be a little darker, because middle films usually are. And, you know, they may have been developing this originally as some sort of trilogy, which we may never get now. But my thought on that is, we can't have it be exactly the same as the first movie. So you're still going to have lighthearted Shazam stuff. There's a Khaleesi joke in there, right, with the dragon. But you're also going to get some more tribulations for them to overcome. And I think it still have the heart. It's all about family. The reason he's probably asking for his powers to be taken back is because he sees that the rest of his family getting zapped with it. He's probably thinking he's not fit for this. He's going to probably have some sort of arc where he learns that he is fit for this, and will be able to overcome that and defeat, the villains. So I think that's how it's going to go. I don't try to judge too much on trailers, because I'm sure I'm gonna like it anyway.
Yeah, I was already sold on the movie, so the trailer didn't have that much work to do. I feel like if you weren't totally down for Shazam in the first place, that trailer didn't change. It didn't move the needle. And I don't actually know what the point of trailers is anymore, because everything is polarized and everyone already made up their mind.
It's It's for the
And
general
then,
public. That's all it is.
but
It's not for the
yeah,
hardcore fans.
I know, but I feel like everyone's making up their minds. I have to remind myself, real life and Twitter are different, but it
Yep.
just,
Yep.
I, I don't actually think I've talked to anybody about the Shazam trailer outside of the internet, and I've talked to several people at work about the Ant-Man trailer. The Ant-Man trailers at this point. That looks epic. My only fear for Ant-Man the Wasp Quantumania is that it becomes about the story of Marvel's next phase, Kang the Conqueror. I am worried that Kang is going to overtake Ant-Man in the importance of the movie, but it looks so fun.
Yeah, I think Ant-Man looks great. I am a big fan of the first two Ant-Man films, so having him have an actual big event film in this case, I mean, most of the general public know Ant-Man from Endgame and Civil War, right? Like, if you
Mhm.
take away us hardcore fans that go see every Marvel film, every DC film, a lot of people skipped Ant-Man, and a lot of them skipped Ant-Man and the Wasp. If you just look at box office, stuff
Mhm.
like that. So I'm sure some people have caught up on like Disney Plus and all that, but and they will when they see this trailer and they see a serious Ant-Man tone here. That's pretty interesting, and I think this movie will be a hit because I know there's some part of the internet that's like, the general public doesn't know Kang, right? So Ant-Man's going to perform like the rest of the Ant-Man films, but I don't know if that's true. I think it'll perform better than at least Ant-Man and the Wasp
I
because
don't think
people
I
are
don't
going to
think the
see this
general
movie.
I don't
Sorry.
think the general audience. I'm sorry, I cut into you. I'm horrible at that. It's the first podcast for a reason. I'm getting going. Sorry to cut you off.
That's all right.
No, and I'm having a great time. This has been a fun show. Kang the Conqueror is a guy that I think most people know just because people talk about the MCU. People are talking about Kang the Conqueror. I don't think people know the source material, but I think it's a very. I think outside of Twitter, you could find people like, yeah, they're setting up Kang, right? I feel like you can.
Yeah,
I
I
not
think
necessarily know that Kang is the big bad guy from the comics, but yeah,
I
they might not
think
be able to tell you specifics.
I think some will, and I think some people won't, but they'll hear good things about this movie if it's good, and they'll go. They'll have friends that'll say, "Hey, this guy is like the next Thanos," and they'll be like, "Oh, I'll actually have to go see this Ant-Man film." Then you're gonna have people like that'll learn this stuff about Kang. Just nobody knew who Thanos was. All right, at the end of Avengers
Fair.
2012, I knew people in the theater that were like, "Who is that? Who is that?" And they had to Google him, right? Because and now he's a household name. Marvel's biggest villain was Doctor Doom, and now it's Thanos. Everybody's all about Thanos. Thanos was
Yep.
right, right? Thanos did nothing wrong. All these subreddits, all the Twitter posts.
I don't know if he didn't do anything wrong, but yes,
It's
it
a
is a
subreddit.
thing. It's a
It's a
thing.
real Reddit.
It's
Yeah,
a conversation. It's almost like Wanda stands
yeah,
at
yeah.
this point. It's like which do we talk about more at this point in the MCU?
But what I really like about this trailer is seeing how menacing Kang is. In the first trailer, he really only comes in and says like two lines. In this one, you see him about to like face stomp uh Paul Rudd's Ant-Man, and you get the more serious tone here. I think this will still largely be about Ant-Man. I think you can kind of rest those fears that you have because I think ultimately this movie is going to be about Kang tricking Scott into this deal where he's going to give him more time to spend with his daughter because he knows that Scott has missed 5 years with his daughter. He knows this is the entry point to get my help, to get help from Scott is to bait this thing that I have control over of time. So that way he will feel like he is finally the dad that he has always wanted to be. I heard on another show before, really like Scott has only ever wanted time with his daughter, right? In the first movie,
Yeah.
he missed so much time in jail. In the second one, he missed time due to house arrest and only occasionally seeing the daughter. In the
Yeah.
third one, we're about to see, but in Endgame, he skipped a whole 5 years. So for Scott, he's been there very little for Cassie. And this is the one point. This is the one thing he's always, the whole reason he became Ant-Man was to be a better father and to show Cassie she can be proud of him. And now, if he can just have that time with her, he can probably rest being Ant-Man. That's probably his thought process here. If I'm going to do this last mission for Kang, I'm going to get that time with my daughter, and then he might find out exactly what Kang's doing and decide I have to put a stop to this, and we start seeing them go blow for blow. So I don't know. I think it'll still have the Ant-Man heart. People slag off Peyton Reed all the time. I think he's been great for the tone that Ant-Man has to be, and he's directed great episodes of The Mandalorian, by the way, Peyton Reed. So I feel pretty confident with where this movie is going to end up.
Yeah, I do too. It's just a concern that I have. I'm excited for it. It's an MCU movie. I'm going to go see it. I will tell you this about Ant-Man. Paul Rudd can make anything work, and it's insane how much of the MCU they have pinned on Ant-Man. Think about how important he was to Endgame. Endgame doesn't even happen without Ant-Man. And you know what? They've always got the character beats perfect. I think you're spot on that. The character beats are perfect. They have a strong identity of what they want to do with these movies. I think the scope of this movie looks it's actually hilarious. As you go into the quantum realm, and the scope looks bigger than real life. It looks bigger than like the Grand Canyon. Oh my god, I cannot wait to be quantumized. I can't wait. I can't wait. I think this movie is going to be the most fun Marvel project since Phase 3.
No Way Home is up there for me, so I'm gonna have to.
I almost forgot that. God dang! I almost forgot that was Phase 4. Okay, since No Way Home,
There you go.
Because it was. Yeah, I. This is the problem with phases. We forget which one we're in.
Well, and sometimes they have very weird ending points, right? Like you would think they ended Avenger films, but Ant-Man is the end of Phase 2. Right, and then Phase 3's ending is actually Far From Home, right? So you have these like weird parts where occasionally they throw you for a loop on which one is the last.
Right.
Which one should be the last one. You think it should culminate with Avengers, but you actually get a little epilogue after at least Age of Ultron and Endgame.
Yeah. So I think that establishes that we are ready for the movies we are yet to receive. I want one final topic, and I don't know if you got your list ready, but let's go with your top 10 favorite comic books. And you can start in any order, or you can say this is in no order because it's impossible. When you do favorites, just give me 10 comic book stories. And I'm thinking like trade paperback kind of stories, like contained stories. So I don't want like, well, my favorite story is all of the Spider-Man story wrapped up into one little like 8,000 issue. No, we're not doing that.
Right.
But you know exactly where I'm going with this. So give me just start me off with one here.
All right. I have them in a rough order, but I don't know how accurate it is. It changes. But I have number 1 here. I have The Long Halloween.
We have the same number 1. Same number 1. Which is not surprising, given that we love Batman. And Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale are undefeated.
Yeah, it's just a great comic. It's one of the first ones I read of Batman. So like I started reading comics when I was little, and I forget what issue I had for Batman growing up. I got it at like a flea market or something. But I would then buy some of the trade paperbacks after Rebirth, but I didn't really read them that much because sometimes I felt like it's tough to find a spot to just enter, right? So I thought, oh, Rebirth would be a good spot, but I still felt like I was missing some stuff. So, I had an injury. I missed work for a week. It was actually this week, 3 years ago. And I had Comixology and I heard good things about The Long Halloween. And I just said, all right, I heard this one's self contained. I'm going to read this, and just blew me away. Right. And then we had, then I was like, okay, on to year one. And I would just start reading like full on graphic novels. You're bringing out, is that the absolute?
Oh, yeah.
See, I have the paperback. I mean, yeah, I have the trade paperback. I don't have.
Well, I actually gave my trade paperback away to a guy. The guy did me a favor. My car was, and he gave me a ride to work, a coworker, and his ringtone goes off, and it's the na 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 Batman. I was like, you like Batman? So, but yeah, just give a little bit of. For the people who are watching this, the audio are going to be like, okay, cool. He's showing his comic book panels. But just look how masterful Jim Sale sets a tone. And I'm not going to bring out every book here, especially because it's hard to do the angles that like work on the camera. Yeah. But the Absolute Edition, I don't think there's ever been anything worth more like it's priceless. One thing I will say is my biggest frustration as a collector, I have the Absolute Haunted Night and the Absolute Long Halloween. Dark Victory is out of print. The secondary market is stupid.
Yep.
And I can't justify spending that kind of money on a book, like at all. I can barely justify spending that money on Ravens tickets.
Yeah, those are crazy.
Which I will end up doing anyway. But yeah. So that's my biggest thing. That leads me into my number 2, Dark Victory. Kind of a cheat because I kind of consider them as one story.
Yeah.
Dark Victory is the consequences of the Long Halloween. But one of the things that I love about these 2 stories, especially the second one, is Two-Face is one of my favorite characters. Harvey Dent is one of my favorite characters, and I think I would argue that Dark Victory is just as good of a Two-Face story as Long Halloween. Especially because I consider it one story. I think it's the fallout of Jim Gordon, Batman, and Harvey Dent bending the rules. So that rooftop scene in the Long Halloween is my favorite panel in comics. I'm not going to go get it and put it on the screen.
I made it.
Yeah. I was thinking about doing it. I was like, nah, we're not going to.
I made a great edit of a panel from the Long Halloween. I use it as our slogan sometimes when people are doubting James Gunn. But I took the I believe in Harvey Dent and I said, I believe in James Gunn. So I have Harvey's wife saying that as a panel, and I've just been posting that.
I believe in Gotham.
Yeah, when people start being mean about James Gunn, I start posting that. But yeah, Dark Victory I have listed as number 9 for mine, so we can kind of talk that it's both in our top 10s. Yeah. I've only read this one once, but I just remember being thankful that there was more Long Halloween to read, and getting the introduction of Robin and seeing a different way that Robin enters the fray here. This is what I mean by like it's really good if you haven't read a lot of comics or you don't know where to start with just some of these graphic novels that are one-offs or standalone. Yeah. And then from there, if you get the dynamic, you can jump into almost any book from there on and kind of
you can pick a continuity that you want to get into. You can pick the launching point. So what I did was I jumped around and then I started with Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo and a New 52. Yeah. And that, by the way, Court of Owls is on the list, but it's not this high.
I should have put it on mine, but you know what? It's good I have some different stuff, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to be very Batman Flash focused. So
yeah.
Do you want to give us your number 2?
Fantastic Four Life Story. This is a really new book. It's 6 issues made into one. The trade paperback just came out earlier this year. So they did a Spider-Man life story one. I wasn't as
Mhm.
crazy about that. That was written by Chip Zdarsky. But the concept is, for people that don't know, issue 1 is set in the 60s, issue 2 is in the 70s, the issue 3 is in the 80s, issue 4 is in the 90s, issue 5 is in the 2000s, and issue 6 is
That's a cool
2010s.
concept.
And what it does is the characters actually age in these time frames in this book, compared to, the normal continuity where all these people are still almost the same age as the
It's
60s.
almost like Superman for all seasons for
Yes.
the Fantastic Four.
Yeah, and it's really cool because, and I thought this one was just really, really well done. I bought all of the issues singly, and because Marvel has the thing where it comes with
Mhm.
a digital copy as well. So I have, then I can read them on my Marvel app, whenever I want, which is great. But it's called, like I said, Fantastic Four Life Story. You can find the trade. It's probably on Marvel Unlimited at this time, but it's just really cool the way that they bring in some of the characters. They kind of take plots that were famous in that era too. Like when Spider-Man did Life Story, when it reached the 90s, it did the Clone Saga from a new point of view because that was what was popular in the 90s. And Fantastic Four kind of follows with that stuff as well. So
Mhm.
that is a really, just if you're interested in Fantastic Four because the MCU is about to launch the characters, pick that up. It's standalone. You have a full story. It's just really great.
All right, so my number 3 will stay Marvel, which is there's not a lot of Marvel on my top 10 because I'm a DC guy. Um, but you're gonna figure out who my favorite creators are with this one. Spider-Man Blue, Jeff Loeb, Tim Sale. My top 3 books are by them. Um, Look, Spider-Man Blue is one of the most emotional comic books you're ever going to read. It's a great example of Peter Parker that you don't always get in the movies. Um, the Gwen and MJ stuff in this is fantastic. The art is it's Tim Sale art. I don't have to say anymore. He's my favorite comic book artist.
I'm
Um,
ashamed because I don't think I've read this one. As a huge Spider-Man fan, I have not read Spider-Man Blue, I don't think.
well, I'm actually ashamed at how little Marvel I've read. There'd probably be a lot more Marvel on my list if I read
Right.
more Marvel. I just stay in the DC lane so much. One of the reasons I got this is I got the omnibus. Is the Spider-Man Blue, Hulk Gray Hulk,
Mm-hmm.
Daredevil Yellow, and Captain America White, and it's all collected together. Because again, anything by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale, I am going to read. So anyway, Spider-Man Blue it blew me away. And I think it's an emotional story. It's just an emotional story, and it kind of tells you the whole Spider-Man story in one story. Basically, it's beautiful. I honestly, if there's a comic book that could make you cry, it might be this one. So I'm not going to give too much away.
I added it to my list. I'm gonna probably try to read it this weekend or something.
Nice. Spider-Man Blue is one, and like I have a feeling that the ones that you put on your list are going to be on my list very soon. I'm going back to school. We'll see how much comics I get into. But yeah. That's my number 3. How about let's see, which one are you on? Your number 3, yeah.
Batman Year One is what I had.
Yes.
Here. So I read this one like right after I read Long Halloween. That's that January of 2020, before the world shut down, and it was just it was great, and it reminds me a lot of, there's stuff in there that you see like, oh, this is Batman Begins, and there's stuff in there that you say this is the Batman, right? So that's really cool. I don't know. I don't want to say too much about it, but it's just a fun story. If you're somebody that takes a lot more of I like early Batman, I like Batman facing the mob. year one is right up your alley.
You have fed well. Your feast is now over. Yeah, that's you can't beat it, and the art in that one by Mazzucchelli, I believe, unbelievable. Great story. We'll talk about it now because it's in my list, but it's not here. I think James Gordon's start with Batman start paralleling and the Catwoman, which you saw a lot of the year one influence in Catwoman in the Batman movie. Just picture perfect. It is Batman as it should be in the beginning. He messes up and gets lucky a couple times. It's just Batman as it should be. I thought it's funny because we didn't do an origin, but if there was ever a movie that hit the year one vibe, it was the Batman with Robert Pattinson.
Right.
So I know it was a year two story, but yeah, I love this book, and that's a great list so far. Number 4 for me is Flashpoint. The Flashpoint Paradox. It's probably the book I've read the most. And it's my favorite because it's a quick read. It's if you read all the connecting ones, it'll take forever. But it's a quick read, and you can't put it down. I like the idea of the Thomas Wayne Batman. I think that was everyone's favorite part of it. But Martha becoming the Joker. Spoilers for books you should have read by now.
See, I haven't read Flashpoint, but I watched the cartoon, so I do know everything you're saying.
Yeah.
I do know.
And then Superman landing in Metropolis and it being like a 9/11 kind of event where he takes out buildings when he lands, and then the government deprives him of sunlight, and he's this scrawny little thing with a black shirt that says S on it, and it's just I love the scene when he sees the sun for the first time, and you could see it. You know how Superman's the character of hope? Mm-hmm. This is Superman that never even understood the concept of hope, and when he sees the sun for the first time, it's perfect. So Flashpoint, as a Flash fan, and as a DC fan, it gives me everything that I like in a story. And Barry, I could talk about Flashpoint forever, but we need to get going. But I love Flashpoint. That's my number 4.
My number 4 is something I just read last week, and it is something that is jumped up there pretty well. And if you're excited for Quantumania or you're excited for Kang Dynasty, this book is called Kang the Conqueror, Only Myself Left to Conquer. It is a 2021 Kang miniseries for 5 issues. And it is pretty great as it starts out with Kang in the 31st century being abducted by his future self, who is trying to stop him from stopping him from falling in love with Ravonna Renslayer, and to never love, and to try to be the best version of himself. And this young Kang who tries to avoid listening to the lesson his older self gives. And we follow him throughout time as he gets older. And it's just a really great Kang-focused story if anyone wants to read that. But yeah, Kang the Conqueror, Only Myself Left to Conquer.
Yeah, you said 5 issues, and I said, "Oh, I'm reading that."
Yeah, that's really quick read.
Yeah, that 5 issues. I'm like, I don't even have to get the trade. I can read that digitally. That sounds great. God, I want to read that. Number 5 for me is Batman: The Man Who Laughs. My favorite Joker story of all time. Better than The Killing Joke for the people who need to hear it in the back. Batman: The Man Who Laughs is early Joker Batman. It is Batman realizing the depravity and craziness of the Joker. It is just pitch perfect, that the dichotomy between the two characters and early Batman stuff. It's the most underrated early Batman story, and God, I love it. Batman, the man who laughs, not to be confused with the Batman that laughs.
I got confused there, and I thought you were saying that one, and I said I never read that, but I have read the one you're talking about.
Batman, the man who laughs, is the Joker story that no one talks about. It annoys the living daylights out of me, because it's honestly, as far as a quick read, it might be my number one quick read, just so the sense of I can sit down and read that pretty quick. It's a pretty thin trade paperback. Let's see, I got it right here, eye level. See how thin this paperback, trade paperback is. By the way, that cover is so iconic. Yeah, just I can't. The art in it is absolutely incredible, and I'm not going to flip through it. I got to get better at showing comic book panels on screen. But yeah, Batman the Man Who Laughs. Can't say enough about it. We can move on because I could never say enough about how much I love that book.
That's a good one. I have number 5, Superman for All Seasons.
Another one on my list.
Jeff Loeb,
so we can talk about that. Yep.
But it's a great Superman story. It takes place, with each season going by. So it's kind of that similar feel of Long Halloween, where it goes through each calendar month. Just something that they're really great at, those two. So yeah, that's up there for me, is Superman for All Seasons. I can't find it anywhere on trade paperback right now, but I think the Absolute's supposed to come out later this summer. So maybe that'll be my first Absolute edition.
Yeah, by the way, Absolute editions, I have 9 of them. They're my favorite way to read comics. It's like reading a movie. It's perfect. The oversized, beautiful art. My rule with Absolutes is if the art warrants it, I will buy it. If I love the story, not necessarily the art, I will not buy the Absolute. Superman for All Seasons is a perfect example of what a Superman story should be. I think it gives you the core elements of Superman's character. I love it's so different for Tim Sale too, because it's like his Batman is dark and very heavy lines, and the Superman is so different, and it's so light.
I like his art in For All Seasons better than Long Halloween. Like for me, like Long Halloween, like I can appreciate his art and I've grown more used to it. But when I first read it, I was like, I'm not so crazy about this. But
it's an acquired taste. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it showed me the range that he has as an artist. Tim Sale is an acquired art though. There's a book that's not on my list, but it's called Superman Kryptonite, written by Darwin Cook and drawn by Tim Sale. And that combination is just like, because Darwin Cook and Tim Sale are my 2 favorite artists. And then I was like, oh my God, they both were on the book. I gotta read that. But his Superman, I like that he's not super muscular. He's just kind of big and clunky. I like the idea that he gets his powers from the sun. He doesn't need to be a gym rat. I like that idea. Yeah, great book. I need to read it again. It's been a while.
Yeah, he's got kind of that similar build to like the animated Superman, like animated series, where it's not, if you watch Superman the animated series, he's not like built either. He's got broad shoulders, he's got muscles, but he's not like you said, a gym rat or something.
All right, so we're on number 5, right?
Yes.
All right, so my number 5 is Superman as well, but it's All-Star Superman. This book, first, Drink Quietly, Art, so good. But I love the premise of this book. What would Superman do in his last days? What he knows that, his time is limited, and it's such a fun book, and I just think it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. There's nothing I would change about it.
I have yet to read it. It's been on my list, but I keep bypassing it. But I've heard mixed things. I've heard a lot of people say it's really great, and I know some people that are big Superman fans that say it's not. So I'm really curious, and I think that's one reason why I kept putting it off. But
if I ever get the absolute, I will give you my trade.
Okay.
If I ever get the absolute. Right now, I'm not spending money, so you're gonna have to wait on that.
I'm gonna read the digital. I usually read the digital, and then if I really like it, I go and get that.
Yeah.
The trade.
But All-Star Superman to me is the best Superman story, and that I've read anyway. I really think it's perfect. It's just you get the Lex Luthor and Clark, and there's a scene in that I particularly love where Clark is being clumsy and he falls and actually saves Luthor, but like he doesn't know. He just thinks Clark's being this bumbling idiot. Just every element that you like about Superman, very much like I said about Superman for all seasons. It's just the core character.
And James Gunn was reading this as well.
I was so excited. I was like, I didn't even wait to see that people said it was All-Star Superman. I was like, that guy's reading All-Star Superman. Let's go.
Yeah, and I saw somebody say, well, this should not be the basis of the first Superman movie.
It's not going to be.
That's what I said. I responded and I said, it doesn't mean it is going to be the basis. He could just like it, but also it's just getting the character right? Like,
isn't it cool that he likes comic books and that he reads comic books?
Yes.
Like that sounds like a nice morning to me. Just sitting down with coffee and a comic book. That sounds pretty good and nice to me. I think we should celebrate that, not go, oh, why are you reading All-Star Superman? You should be reading this book.
Right.
Like how gatekeeper can we be to the guy who's creating the universe?
A lot. We can be a lot gatekeeping, apparently.
Oh, my God. All right, what's your number 5, buddy?
I'm on number 6.
My bad.
That's right.
My bad. I forgot. I'm horrible at keeping track of that stuff, so keep me honest.
I went first, so yes, I'm always on the next number. House of X Powers of 10, which was an X-Men comic by Jonathan Hickman that came out in when they relaunched X-Men, and this is something really great. There's a great storyline in here with Moira McTaggart, who is Moira McTaggart, who's been kind of like a non-mutant character in the past. They kind of retcon her to be a mutant character in this, but her issue that's in this book is like the perfect way to introduce the X-Men in the MCU, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. There's something about this book I really liked. So I would recommend anybody looking to get an X-Men. This is another soft launch spot for the X-Men, would be House of X Powers of 10. Look up the reading order, because I believe you're supposed to alternate when you read House of X1, then Powers of 10 1, and back and forth for a bit. So if people are interested, look up the reading order. That's what I had to do when I was reading it.
Nice. That's one that I have no frame of reference on at all. X-Men is the thing that I'm embarrassingly never got into at all. And now I'm like, my buddy Ron, who was again the architect of the show,
right?
He's so into X-Men, and so he's so into Star Wars, and I like Star Wars, but he loves Star Wars. So the two things he's hammering me on, the two things he keeps telling me to get on, Star Wars and like the animated Star Wars stuff, not just the
Oh
movies.
yeah.
And then like I started watching Clone Wars and X-Men. So yeah, it's stuff I actually am looking forward to getting into. My number 6, we talked about it already. Green Arrow, Green Lantern.
Mm.
I love this one because every issue is so interesting because it's a dated comic book. It's an older comic book story. And it, you got the space cop conservative Green Lantern and you've got the progressive Green Green Arrow. And they're basically fighting about politics in each issue. Which is probably why it's not more popular. But it's just like ride through America with these two. It's fun, and it's interesting, and it's funny to see how much the politics have changed on both sides. And it's just fun, man. It's an interesting book. I think it should be honestly taught in history classes, just because it's a perspective that you don't necessarily get often. So I think it's good, and it's cool because you get just enough cool Green Arrow, Green Lantern stuff, and you get just enough reality in there, and it's a nice balance. So that's my number 6.
My number 7 is Ultimate Spider-Man Volume 1. I put on there, but really just read all of Ultimate Spider-Man if you can. It's like 100 issues, but it is a great starting point for Spider-Man. It was Ultimate Universe, if people don't know, for Marvel was launched in like the early 2000s, late 90s with Ultimate Spider-Man, and then they kind of built out the whole Ultimate Universe, and it was a way for them to kind of reset Spider-Man back to high school, but also consistently keep him in high school. Like this whole 100 issues takes place in about 18 months of Spider-Man Peter Parker's life after he gets his powers. And I talked about it on Spider-Man Book Club. If people want to listen to the Spider-Man Book Club, that's a show that I went on and just talked about this issue, this volume, because it's 7 issues. It feels a lot like a mix of if you were to take Tom Holland Spider-Man mixed with Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. And there's even this fun plot when Spider-Man gets a movie based off of his life, and they get Tobey Maguire to play him in the comic book. And it was around the time the movie came out. So they were really meta with that. It's written by Brian Michael Bendis, but it's a really, really fun Spider-Man comic.
Nice. That's another one I got to add to the list. Number 7 for me, it's going to be Batman Hush. Another one I have the absolute edition of. Another Jeff Loeb. This one not with Tim Sale, but with Jim Lee. Which again, Jeff Loeb is such a spoiled writer when it comes to artists. But it's Tommy Elliott Hush is a really cool character. He's kind of I don't want to give it away. I don't want to give Hush away if you've never seen it. And if you saw the animated movie, you can still read the book without giving it away because they went completely off the rails there. I love Hush. I think the art's fantastic. There's a sequence in the early thing where Poison Ivy mind controls Superman, and Batman is fighting him with a kryptonite knuckle, and he knows that's not going to be enough. And he has Catwoman drop Lois off a building, and he snaps out of it and saves her. And he says, "How did you know this would work?" He said, "I didn't. I had Robin ready to catch her."
Oh, nice.
So it's one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite things in that book. But there's so many good things to go there. But the character of Tommy Elliott and the character of Hush, and the villain of Hush. And there's the reason I don't want to give it away is there's a twist in the middle of the book where if you know what's coming, it loses a little bit of it. And there's enough people that might not have read Hush. If I spoil year one or The Long Halloween, it's hard to care.
Right.
That's like, but Hush is not necessarily the top 1 to 5 books associated. It is one of the best starting points for Batman because it has so many characters in it. I mean, Jeff Loeb doesn't write single character stories. So yeah, Batman Hush. That's my number 7.
Nice. My number 8 is Spider-Verse, the event that was, I don't even know how long ago now, but it launched the idea of Into the Spider-Verse, the movie, and all that kind of stuff. But Spider-Verse is fun. This is another one I read while I was injured 3 years ago. I finally got around to it, and I just was able to finally buy the trade paperback. My comic shop finally had it back in stock. It was out of print, or it was out of stock on Amazon. It was like hard to find anywhere. And I was finally able to get this book, and it's huge, but definitely it's up there for me. So I have Spider-Verse.
Nice. And I can't wait for Across the Spider-Verse. And it's another thing that can be talked about on this show in another episode. Awesome stuff there. God, I like our lists. They're fun. Number 8 for me is going to be Harleen. This is a book that's basically the Harley Quinn origin story. It's the best art I've ever seen in a comic book. The best art I've ever seen in a comic book. Stefan Sajak, I believe, is how you say the artist's name. He was the artist and writer, I believe. Just unbelievable book. You know the story, but it's better than Mad Love. It's not glossed over. You kind of get, oh my God, you see the Joker's manipulations. You can kind of see how she fell for it. I think it's subtly one of the more interesting Two-Face stories because they kind of overarch Two-Face's beginnings with Harley Quinn's beginnings, which is kind of interesting. And it's subtly one of the better Joker books. Joker's drawn differently in this. He's drawn a little less ugly and a little more, you can see how Harley would fall for the guy. It's just a book that's just randomly pops in your head sometimes. It's a book that explains a hell of a lot. And it's the best art I've ever seen in a comic book.
Nice. I'm not familiar with that one.
Yeah, hardcover is what I recommend. Deluxe hardcover, because it's one of those books it looks cool. Actually, I'll show you the cover of it because I think the cover of it is ridiculous. Right here. That's the cover, but if you take off the slipcase.
Oh, okay.
And that's what the art's like in this book. It's just you almost wonder, did this take him his whole life?
Right.
It's a masterpiece. It's just a masterpiece. And if you like Harley Quinn, I think that's a book that has to be on here. I think it changes how you think of Harley Quinn, even if you're a big Harley Quinn fan. All right, so your next entry into the top 10 list. 9,
I had Dark Victory.
Okay. We talked about that already. Yep. It almost hurts me to have it this low on the list, but I'm so grateful that it's on the list. Dark Victory, to me, I think Tim Sale's art is better in Dark Victory. I think it's I just love where they went with this. Just perfect. Okay. Number 9 for me, Flash Rebirth. Barry Allen comes back. You get you get Eobard Thawne, the Reverse Flash, giving him the revelation, telling him all the business. And it's just, it's weird because it's just everything you love about Flash and Reverse Flash. Boom, right in there. Flash Rebirth, good art, great story. It's a little confusing because, the Barry coming back thing, and it's not the greatest entry point to Flash, but I really, really dig this book. I think it was a lot of fun. And again, it's one of those quick reads that I want to read a Flash book. Okay, boom.
All right, my number 10, I have DC Comics versus Marvel Comics, the 1996 event where they faced off against each other.
Is that available digitally anywhere?
No, it's
because I don't have the trade, and I don't think I've ever found that.
Yeah, I got the trade for pretty cheap on eBay, actually. But
okay.
I read it because when I was little, like I said, I went to flea markets. I used to buy comics, and I have I think, second issue just randomly from a flea market. So I didn't know what was going on from before it. I never finished it. I was able to find a version of it online, and then I went and bought the trade. So, yeah, it's really cool.
Dude, that sounds absolutely awesome. So, darn, that sounds cool. Nice. Let's see. I'm trying to think. There's like 5 books I want to put at number 10. That's the problem with these lists. Boom, 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 boom. I'm gonna go classic on here. I'm gonna go with a classic. When I started reading Batman, I was almost avoiding this book. I was almost avoiding it because I didn't want it to be what I started out with on Batman. I wanted to appreciate it. Batman, The Dark Knight Returns.
Oh, okay.
And I have the 35th anniversary 4 little hardcovers. So each issue is a hardcover book. It's so freaking awesome. If you don't like Batman versus Superman, this probably isn't your jam. If I have one complaint about Zack Snyder, it's that it feels like he's only read Batman versus Superman, the Dark Knight Returns, and he specifically that last part of it is like what he cares about. This you got Carrie Kelly there on the spines of the hardcovers. Dude, Carrie Kelly Robin, I actually is one of my favorite characters because she kind of looks like my mom, and I find it funny. Like she looks like a young version of my mom, and she's a cool character. She's spunky, and I really like that version of Robin. And it's a classic, man. It's Frank Miller's masterpiece. It's amazing how good Frank Miller can be and how bad Frank Miller can be. And this is before we knew that the Frank Miller could suck. God, I love this book. Absolutely, I'm going to put it back so my comic books don't fall all over the place in here. But that's the problem with bookshelves. But yeah, just that's my top 10. Honorable mention goes to Batman Ego. Honorable mention to the Flash volume number 8 of the New 52 Zoom. Anything, if you could tell, anything Reverse Flash, I'm here for. He's actually my favorite villain of all time. And an honorable mention, and I'll give you some honorable mentions too, to Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, which is a recent one. And is that Tom King or Tom Taylor? I always get them mixed up. But basically, it's Supergirl space western, and this character Ruthie is trying to kill the man that murdered her family, and she and Supergirl is trying to seek justice for her and traveling across the galaxies with her. So the art is fantastic, and the story is pretty cool. It starts off with Supergirl on her 21st birthday going to a planet with a red sun so she can drink.
Oh,
And she kicks without powers. She kicks the living shit out of a guy, and starts a fight. So, it's just a cool book. It's a cool concept. There's actually one of my favorite lines. I think was they're on a planet that was basically designed to be a trap for Superman, and she's being tortured by the elements of the planet. And she goes, "God damn, they really hate my cousin." So she's like, "Everybody hates my cousin." Oh, so it was funny. So yeah, it was a good book. It had a good heart to it. It's really what I look for in a DC comic book. So yeah, those are my honorable mentions. You got any honorable mentions?
yeah. So I'll give History of the Marvel Universe. That's another like 6-issue thing. It's Galactus telling the story to Franklin Richards about the whole history of the Marvel Universe at the end of time. So that is one that's really cool, and it kind of goes through all the continuity, almost like life story for stuff. But that one's fun. And I think the next runner-up I have is a story that I also talked about on the Spider-Man Book Club on my second appearance there, was Spider-Man Loves Mary Jane, which is a fun high school-based Peter Parker story, but the main character is Mary Jane, and about her struggles going through there. And the way I kind of pitch this to people is you never see Peter acknowledge he's Spider-Man in the first few issues. So if you don't know that and you're just reading the Spider-Man Loves Mary Jane book, you just think Peter Parker is some kid at her school, and Spider-Man has interactions with Mary Jane. She goes through high school girl stuff. It's a really, really cool Mary Jane story.
Nice. Any other ones before we do plugs and
That's what
let you
I'm
go?
scrolling through my history of comics here, and
I don't want to shortchange comics because I love me some comic books.
but I think those are obviously. I think if you read, which one was I going to say here? If you look up the Ironheart series from like 2016, I really enjoyed that one too. I read that recently, and if you're interested in Ironheart the show, that's a good starting point. But yeah, I think those are my big honorable mentions.
That's awesome. So you want to give some plugs before we get out of here? It's been almost 2 hours of comic book talk. I think that'll do it. So yeah, go ahead, tell people where they can find you, and thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. My Marvel podcast is called To the Infinity Saga and Beyond. You can go to Twitter at TO Infinity Saga, and you can click the link tree there and follow us, or search To the Infinity Saga on Apple or Spotify. It should come up. And my other podcast for DC is Elseworlds, a DC fan podcast. And, I just, on Saturday, the 28th, I'm releasing the episode we just did for Superman and Lois season 2. So
what kismet timing.
Yeah,
I've been on that show twice talking about Superman and Lois, and this is our third interaction. You're quickly becoming one of my favorite comic book friends. I'm glad to be part of the community, putting my voice out there finally, and I thank you for giving me someone to bounce off of while I do it. So I was very appreciative you came on. I know it was kind of a last minute thing. You, sir, are the man.
Thank you.
And that'll do it for this episode of the Multiversal Omnibus. It's my first time, so hopefully when I hit end recording, I can get everything good and right. Super excited that the first edition, we're calling them editions, first edition of Multiversal Omnibus is now in the book. All right, guys, see ya. Read comics, watch movies, and have fun.